There are many characters to look to as a favorite option beyond just the Straw Hat, so many characters in the series have been given future trajectories that rival or surpass that of the main cast, and some of them even placing them near the main characters as far as potential goes. But who are those characters? In this video, I want to go over the characters in One Piece with the greatest unrealized potential. I'll try my hardest to not get too speculative and keep it in line with what could actually happen in the stories. So no, Garp would have the greatest potential if he ate the Nika fruit, or Law would get Haki as strong as Joy Boys and be top 1 type answers. I will be leaving off Luffy and Zoro because they're already on the path to achieving their true growth and are closer to achieving their full potential than they are away from it. Think about characters that are nowhere near how strong they could actually be when you watch this video. But enough yapping, let's get into it and see the characters who have the greatest potential in One Piece. Momonosuke is a character who is only just recently starting to get put into this discussion, as now that he has grown into an adult and become the Shogun of Wano, his strength and importance just shot up significantly, especially with Yamato now technically being someone under him as far as factions go. Momonosuke's potential is one of the easier ones to see. His physicality is that of Oden's, and his devil fruit is a perfect replica of Kaido's, minus the fact that the color is pink instead of blue. He has a sword that is equal to Enma as far as potential goes, and with Enma being on the path to become a supreme grade blade in Zoro's hands, Ame no Habakiri would have the exact same potential as well. Momonosuke having Oden's physique is one of the more underrated aspects of his potential, because you never truly realize how powerful Oden's raw physique without Haki is until you remember all the stuff he went through. Oden was essentially the most powerful samurai in Wano before he even turned 20 years old, and stood in a pot of boiling oil while holding up the weight of all 9 scabbards for an hour. The pot was at about 700 degrees and rising about 5 to 10 minutes in, and by the time the hour was up, the pot was so hot that it melted the cuffs off of Oden's hands, with those cuffs being made either out of steel or an alloy of steel and sea stone. Momonosuke is repeatedly shown to have Oden's physique, with both Zoro and Yamato noting his strength and Sugiyaki saying he's now the spitting image of Oden. Momonosuke's raw physical power should be similar to that of his father's, meaning once he trains he would have Haki and attacks with similar strength to that of Oden. Beyond that, however, Momonosuke would now have the physical amulet that the Eastern Dragon Fruit gives him, which is actually a massive one. Kaido's transformation into his hybrid form alone would see him jump from getting knocked on his ass from an attack made by Starter Rooftop Luffy to still being able to press through hits made by Gear 5. Kaido's base durability and endurance are both extremely impressive, yes, I will not discount that, but a large portion of his physical power is due to the fact that he has a mythical zone, and it's even stated that the hardness of his scales is a large portion of his durability. Once Momonosuke awakens a warrior spirit and starts to train, his growth will be exponential. Momonosuke is for all intents and purposes still an 8-year-old. Everything he learns he'll grasp much quicker than an adult would, and since he's now doing all of this in an adult body, his growth will be even quicker once his mentality catches up. He will have base durability and endurance similar to that of Oden, and amplified durability on par with Kaido. His blade will have the potential to become a supreme grade, and this isn't even going into the fact that he could awaken conquerors Haki and then learn its advanced application, as well as awaken his devil fruit. The Seiryu is meant to be a protector that represents benevolence, and Momonosuke aligns with the will of the fruit much more closely than Kaido does, and thus would be much more likely to awaken as well. A hypothetical peak Momonosuke would be an absolute monster and would almost certainly blow both Kaido and Oden away if you realize that true potential. With Zoro being someone who he looks up to and could potentially ask for training as well, his skills as a swordsman would also go through the roof. The kind of potential Momonosuke has would easily place him in the top 3 of characters currently alive, and if you were to be dropped in the story right now, and would place him up there with the likes of Roger and Whitebeard, making him the strongest and most legendary shogun that Wano country has ever seen. Koby is a character who, unlike Momo, doesn't really have the most obvious trajectory for potential. Momonosuke's potential is in your face. We have characters who he directly ties to as far as physical, tangible potential goes. For Koby, it's more speculative because there will always be an argument of, well, sure, but does he actually even need to get that strong? Koby is a character who is essentially the Luffy of the Marines. He's a frontrunner of the new generation as far as the Navy is concerned. He was tutored by Monkey D. Garp, and he has had the fastest and most drastic growth out of any character in the series, bar none. He literally went from weaker than fodder on Alvida's crew to being able to one-shot entire mountains in a single strike. And this isn't even him at where his narrative potential says he should be. A trope in One Piece, at the very least a trope in the Navy, is that the new generation will always surpass the old. Every generation of the Navy has been better than the generation that came before them, and now with Koby being not only the new hero of the Navy but the star pupil of Garp, he's bound to follow that same path and surpass his master. Koby is chasing behind Luffy the same way that Garp was chasing behind Roger. Koby has now found his resolve to take Luffy down, which is something that he never truly had before, as although he wanted to stop Luffy and capture him, he was still rooting for Luffy. Now Koby has made it clear that he cannot allow Luffy to achieve his dream because he believes it will spell the end of the world. Koby will now have to grow to meet the demand of his dream and put in the requisite effort to accomplish it. Now, I'm not saying that Koby's gonna be Luffy's equal by the end of the story the same way Garp and Roger were, even though it could happen, but we all know that Luffy's going to blow the entire verse out of the water by the time he reaches his peak, so Koby doesn't really have to be his equal to still have crazy potential. It's more of a shot for the moon and fall in the clouds type of trajectory. Koby at the very least will surpass Kuzan, meaning he will surpass Akainu, who is currently in the top 5 of the verse right now. Koby would logically surpass surpass Garp as well, meaning he'd also surpass characters like Roger and Whitebeard. And if Oda gives Koby that kind of love and makes him even remotely comparable to end of series Luffy for the sake of drawing their parallel in Romance Dawn, then Koby would stand in the top bracket of fighters of all time by the end of the story. Koby's potential, as I said before, is more speculative than concrete because of his importance to the narrative of the story. It should be absolutely insane that someone like him will be at bare minimum in the class of the strongest admirals in the story. That's like Chopper becoming somebody who could fight on par with Roger and Whitebeard, and Chopper started off much stronger than Koby was when he started. Now, I know I said otherwise at the start of the video, but for this character, I'm going to be getting extremely almost headcanon levels of speculative, and that character is going to be Enel. I'm going to be honest, if you completely disregard Enel being on this list, I don't blame you. Him being up here is entirely based on my bias for Enel, but I'm always going to beat this horse. If One Piece was going to end in 5 years after Alabasta, Enel was going to be what Emu became. Enel's Devil Fruit has constantly been gassed in the story for years and years after he left it, and it's an ability stated to be one of the rare few that makes you invincible numerous times. Lightning is constantly shown to be something that no one besides Luffy can brush off and get up from. Enel already has the greatest range of observation we've seen in the story, and with perception like that, him getting the higher levels of future sight is not crazy at all in my opinion. Armament Haki is easy to learn, and Ryo is not that difficult to master either. Enel embodies the conqueror's spirit to a T. He's dominant, he has an insurmountable goal, and he's willing to do anything to achieve it. He desires adventure, and he has a carefree attitude that those with the pinnacle of conqueror's Haki possess. The fact that advanced conqueror's Haki is literally just black lightning just confirms to me in my head that Enel is going to get it at some point because that's the easiest layup imaginable. Enel is also an extremely narratively important character because until we see otherwise, he would have been the first person to go back to the moon since the original race descended from the moon even before the Void Century. And if Emu's origins have anything to do with the information up there at all, I'm finding a way to push Enel to top 10 of all time. I do not care. Enel is not like Doflamingo or Katakuri that just become irrelevant side pieces to other characters after they're defeated. He has a vision, his spirit did not weaken after his defeat, and he now has an entire army and the might of an ancient weapon behind him along with the strongest fruit in the Logia class. I don't care what you tell me, that man definitely could scratch the top 10 of all time and will blow every current character besides Shanks, Emu, and Blackbeard off the map if he were to reach his true potential. But hey, that's just my headcanon. Coming back down to earth again, I have S-Hawk. S-Hawk, just like Momonosuke, has a very clear and obvious potential trajectory. He's literally Mihawk, like, he's literally just a clone of Mihawk. If anything, he's just an amped version of Momonosuke. He has a greater baseline with Mihawk being stronger than Odin, he has greater amps with Lunarian genes because King's durability is greater than Kaido's, and he has a better ability for his skill set because the Blade Fruit is literally stated to amplify Mihawk's swordsmanship, with S-Hawk now possessing the potential to even surpass Mihawk, and if the blade that he carries has the potential to grow to what Yoru becomes, then he also has the potential to create a Supreme Grade blade on par with the greatest Supreme Grade blade. S-Hawk's potential is solely hinged on whether or not Oda actually lets him reach that potential, because based off potential alone, a Prime S-Hawk should blow Zoro out of the water even after he beats Mihawk. Like, you're literally mashing together the traits of the 3 hardest fights that Zoro has ever fought, and I mean, he even has Kizaru's lasers on top of everything I just listed. If Oda ages up S-Hawk to be an adult artificially so that he's an adult in the main story, then obviously there's no way he gets that strong, but if you give us a One Piece sequel, then S-Hawk would essentially be the next world's greatest swordsman after Zoro. A potential realized S-Hawk, I'm not gonna lie to you, would probably be able to 2v1 some high top tier characters. I'm not even lying. I'm talking an extreme diff with Shanks and Mihawk 2v1 type of character. Based off his age right now, he's probably a little older than 10, if just shy of 10 years old. You give him 20 years to train and grow at the pace that Zoro's growing at, and at the pace that any One Piece top tier was growing at, he's easily top 10, if not top 5 of all time. Since I said this twice now, I'm gonna be giving you guys a hypothetical top 10 of all time at the end of the video since I referenced it. S-Bear is probably somebody who no one was expecting, but here's why I have him up here. He has Lunarian genes and Kizaru's lasers, yes, that's cool. He also has Buccaneer genes, and we know Kuma is a monster, yes, that's also cool. But even crazier, he also has the Pawpaw Fruit, and let me tell you why that's crazy. The Pawpaw Fruit in the hands of someone who at bare minimum will have the potential to rival Zoro on Wano pre-King of Hell is absolutely insane. I don't think Kuma ever got anywhere near where Zoro was on Wano, more than likely where Dressrosa Gear 4 was at, but disregarding that, Zoro on Wano has insane speed, insane offense, and insane durability, and was still inferior to King until he got King of Hell simply off the fact that King was a Lunarian. King was not some crazy prodigious fighter. The man had basic Haki and no awakening, and he was simply a Lunarian genes merchant. Give a child that kind of genes, and then you add not only Buccaneer genes on top of that, but also give them a fruit that literally allows them to negate their pain, compress the air into nukes, shoot lasers out of their hands, and practically teleport in short distances, negating the speed downside Lunarians have when they increase their durability. durability, and even at that, Esper would also still have crazy durability and endurance even with his flame gimmick. While I'm not gonna say he has top 10 of all time potential, he would easily be an Admiral or Emperor caliber fighter and someone that could run the ones with Kaido, Big Mom, and Kizaru, especially since he's already confirmed to have basic haki at what is essentially 10 years old, meaning you let him live for another 20 years and it's not crazy to say that he advances both his armament and observation haki. Now with both of those two characters out of the way, I could just go down the line of saying all the Seraphim, because I'm not gonna lie, all of these kids have busted potential. Even the hypothetically weakest of them, Gecko, would still at bare minimum be stronger than King, and Moria himself was no slouch back in his heyday. But that's boring, so I just chose the two that have the highest potential ceiling based on what we already know about them. Now if you thought the Enel section was headcanon, this is gonna be fanfiction levels of headcanon. If we assume that the baby that Makino has is Shanks' son, then that baby would naturally have incredible potential. His father is red-haired Shanks, and although his granddaddy is a fraud, his grandfather is also no slouch either. If he becomes the Luffy to Luffy Shanks, I could easily see him getting the MC tax if Oda was ever to write a sequel to One Piece. Even if it's not Shanks' kid, however, the fact that it's Makino's kid and now the baby is shown being a fan of Luffy and treating him as his big brother just gives him future narrative importance when he grows up, and every important character from the East Blue tied to Luffy, Shanks, or Roger is on the trajectory to become at the very least stronger than Yasopp, so Makino's son also has insane potential as well. Less fanfiction but still pretty headcanon is Ace. Actually, I lied. This isn't fanfiction at all. If Ace was alive to this day, he would blow Whitebeard and Roger out of the water by the time he hit his prime, and that's for three key reasons, being generational growth, Luffy tax, and power creep in the current story. Ace by the time he was alive was a world-class pirate and is implied to be at the very least relative to base Yamato. In his weakened state, he was capable of clashing with a suppressed Aokiji, which, although he was suppressed, that's still an admiral, and is also implied to be in the top bracket of Whitebeard's commanders. Ace at the time of Marineford was 20 years old. If we say Roger set sail about the same time Ace did at 17, it would have taken him about 22 years to get to the strength he was on God Valley. I'm gonna say he was relative to where Shanks is right now because he fought his strongest foe ever. Ace is Luffy's big brother. Even if Luffy surpasses Ace, Ace is not going to be far behind because he's his big brother. But that makes no sense. Sabo is nowhere near Luffy and he's Luffy's brother, but Ace is not Sabo. Ace is much more important than Sabo would be narratively, and Ace also has the Pirate King genes and the added tax of surpassing Whitebeard, since Whitebeard would still be dead even if Ace was alive. Luffy is currently on a level where he can box Kaido in a 1v1 and win, and is someone who is one or two arcs away from defeating Shanks, who I'm assuming Roger on God Valley is near to. If Ace was still alive, he would in 5 years of sailing be near where Roger was in 22 years of sailing. Now Ace already has conquerors haki, so don't look at me crazy when I say that Ace would get advanced conquerors haki if he was still alive. But not even considering that, we gave Ace a devil fruit on top of all of that. Not only a devil fruit, but a Logia. Not only a Logia, but a Logia that controls fire and is a direct inferior of a fruit stated to have the highest offensive power. Now that might seem like a weird thing to bring up, but follow me. Fire is an extremely powerful ability to possess offensively in the One Piece world, and the only thing stated to be superior to it is literally the greatest offensive thing in the verse. Ace would not only have Roger's genes, a greater trajectory than Roger, the will to surpass Whitebeard and Roger, the drive to stay comparable to Luffy so that he can keep protecting him, but also the devil fruit that could possibly be the second to third offensive devil fruit in the series. Oh yeah, and add awakening on top of all of that. Ace's potential is quite possibly just as good as Luffy's, with Luffy only being better because he has a mythical zone. Ace narratively would surpass both Whitebeard and Roger in terms of haki, and his devil fruit usage would be on par with what Akainu was able to perform if I try to write a fanfic narrative that says he has a rematch with him to get revenge for Whitebeard. All the hypotheticals aside, however, Ace is essentially just a power corrupt Roger with a Logia fruit, and he would more than likely surpass characters like Shanks and Mihawk easily, and possibly even someone like Xebec if I'm being honest. If Ace was left alive, he would very likely shine just as bright as Luffy, which is more than likely one of the reasons he was killed off on Marineford, beyond simply just making Luffy have a time skip. Now I'm not one of the people that believes that Ace would be the MC after Marineford, because that's just silly. Luffy was definitely gonna surpass Ace eventually regardless, but Ace was definitely too big of a star to have in the Sun God solar system. The last of the reasonable contenders is Blackbeard. I probably shouldn't have Blackbeard up here for the same reason I didn't include Luffy and Zoro, which is that he's closer to reaching his full potential than he isn't, but that's only if two things don't happen. Blackbeard isn't near his full potential if he 1. Kills Emu and becomes a final antagonist without doubt, or 2. If he doesn't get a third devil fruit. Now I'm not gonna go into the validity of these, but because there are tons of other videos you can watch, and I've also made videos on this channel about both of them, so if you're really interested, just watch those. Blackbeard again gets the generational growth tax. He has to be stronger than Xebec by the end of the series, series. If you believe the goofy Xebec and Davy Jones are living inside his nipples theory, then he's already that strong and you've basically just given Xebec a Logie and the strongest paramecia. But Xebec will at minimum be surpassed by Blackbeard even if nothing else changes concerning him. If Blackbeard gets a third devil fruit, worst off if he gets a Zoan devil fruit, he instantly shoots through the power ceiling because his main weakness is pain tolerance, endurance, and durability. You give him Imu's ability, again he just shoots through the roof exponentially because you give him not only regen, but a narrative tied to Imu, meaning he will essentially surpass him as well, because narratively anyone who gets the power second will surpass the person who had the power first. Sabo will surpass where Ace was on Marineford, Luffy will surpass Joy Boy, Blackbeard will surpass Whitebeard, and Bartolomeo will surpass Semimaru, and so on and so forth. I bet most of you guys don't even know who that is, so I'm not putting a picture up for him. Blackbeard has numerous potentials that he could reach. His potential, just like Koby, is more speculative than concrete, because if he does become the main villain, he's certainly going to surpass both Imu and Joy Boy. If he doesn't, then he will more than likely just surpass Xebec, and if he gets a third devil fruit not tied to Imu, he will at the very least have the potential to surpass Imu and Joy Boy, but at the very least will be much stronger than Xebec was. Blackbeard could do nothing for the rest of the story and he'd still be top 10 of all time, so it's obvious he's up here. Now the moment you've all been waiting for, the wild cards, the people you didn't even think were worth bringing up in any discussion at all, much less this one. Weevil does have a direct tie to Whitebeard. Whether he's Whitebeard's son or not, the boy is definitely doing the same things that Whitebeard could do. If he's Whitebeard's clone, which is highly likely, then that just means he would have a similar potential ceiling to that of Whitebeard. Now if it's revealed that he's so messed up that he only inherited Whitebeard's mustache and blonde hair, then yes, he wouldn't have Whitebeard level potential, but the mere fact that Weevil got so strong to the point where the Navy needed to send Ryokugyu to capture him and not some vice admiral shows that he definitely has some of that Whitebeard potential in him. If Oda ends up slimming him down like he did with Shinobu because he did fight Green Bull after all, and if Weevil ends up getting that impel down power creep, then I could see him getting close to as strong as Whitebeard was, because then he'd have a better character design, and every strong character has an aesthetic character design. Except Big Mom. Now, do I think he'll ever get that strong? Nah, probably not. Oda would probably never let Weevil surpass Whitebeard unless Weevil becomes a more sympathetic or narratively relevant character, which, hey, it could still happen, because Whitebeard and Bakken did have some relationship even if he says he didn't love her. I mean, you don't really let a woman ride on your shoulders if you absolutely dislike her or have zero feelings at all for her. Even Xebec fell out of love with Shaki eventually after he found Eris, and even though both parents were good looking, the son actually did end up becoming the less of the two parts, so Weevil could actually end up being Whitebeard's biological son and Whitebeard never knowing about him because Bakken hid him from him. I can't really bring myself to ever say that Weevil will get conquerors hockey, so he will have to be an armament hockey merchant. I mean, although his potential could be crazy, I just hate Weevil so much that I can't really find reasons to justify him even getting that strong. But for the sake of being honest, I have to put him on the list. Another one you probably never thought of is King Elizabello. Now this is more of a rewind the hands of time type of potential. Elizabello is very clearly not going to get any stronger, but the fact that a political figurehead possesses a punch strong enough to knock down emperors is proof that Elizabello could have become something monstrous if he wasn't just a king. Kings in One Piece very clearly fell off hard after the old age of pirates. Between King Neptune, King Harold, Don Chenjiao, Odin, and Elizabello, the figureheads in One Piece back then are clearly not on the same caliber they are nowadays. If the King Punch has anything to do with Conquerors hockey at all, I'm putting an alternate reality Elizabello up there with the likes of Big Mom and Old Garp. The main drawback with the King Punch is that it's a once in the fight kind of thing, but that's more than likely due to the fact that Elizabello doesn't train at all because he's a king. If he say joined the Navy or was like Fujitora back when he was young and was just a really strong person defending his nation, he could train himself to be able to replicate the King Punch numerous times in a battle. Now this is all assuming that the King Punch could literally knock out an emperor, which hey, I mean if Red Rock could stun Kaido and Brachio Bomber could knock out Big Mom, I don't see why a well-timed perfectly placed King Punch couldn't, but since it's more than likely exaggerated, this is basically just a what if. Seeing as Don Chenjiao could box Roger and Garp in the past after God Valley, and Harold could box Xebec, then I don't see why an Elizabello who trained the King Punch and mastered it couldn't at least be on the level of an Old Garp or Big Mom in his peak. Speaking of Chenjiao, Sai is up next. I said it before, I'll say it again, generational tax. Now you guys might think this contradicts my why the new gen won't surpass the old gen video, but it doesn't, because it's quite possible that most of these characters never even reach their true potential. Sai's potential would seem get to at least as close as where Don Chenjiao was in his prime, and although Chenjiao got overpowered by Garp, he wasn't necessarily one shot because he and Garp were actually having an equal struggle for a decent bit of time until Chenjiao got overwhelmed. Sai would get the Luffy tax by being a part of the Grand Fleet, and with the Grand Fleet being on the horizon to do something legendary, Sai as one of the top commanders will get a bit stronger. Do I think he gets Conquerors hockey? Hey man, there's an agenda out there for everybody. Don Sai versus one of the Holy Knights, call it a matchup right now. If Sai reached his peak, he could at the very least be close to where Chenjiao is, and the fact that Chenjiao is at all stated to be able to fight Prime Roger and Garp, and the fact that Garp needed to train to beat him is absolutely insane. It's crazy that Don Chenjiao of all people gets that kind of gas, meaning that Sai would probably be in the bracket of pushing Roger and Garp to a possible high diff if he was in his prime. The reason I have Hyruden up here and not Loki as well is because I think Loki is closer to his peak than Hyruden is. I think Hyruden awakens conquerors Haki and will get close to where his father was in terms of strength. Remember that Hyruden is still young compared to Harold by the time he was out here fighting Xebec. Hyruden and Harold have a much greater narrative tie than he and Loki do, and with him wanting to become king of Elbaf and being part of the fleet of the future liberator of the world, he could get to the heights that Harold reached as well. Now it's absolutely insane for me to try and say that Hyruden could one day box rocks, which is why I want to let you guys know I do not think a full power Harold has a chance at beating a full power Xebec. More than likely it would be a high to extreme death fight. Both of them are holding back in their fight, and I think Xebec was holding back a lot more than Harold was. Low key, in doing this video I'm realizing it's possible that most of the Straw Hats don't even get to fight the Holy Knights, and the Grand Fleet's big move will be them helping defeat the Holy Knights. If Sai and Hyruden end up getting Conquerors Haki, Loki joins the Grand Fleet and Yamato joins as well, Momonosuke awakens his Conquerors Haki and Sanji gets it too, then that's like 6 Holy Knights down, not even mentioning if I add Hancock in there and add in the hypothetical Conqueror Usopp. Most of the Straw Hats may not get a Holy Knight fight unless Luffy starts tying Haki knots for them to use, so it's quite possible that all the people I say have potential to get Conquerors Haki do actually end up getting Conquerors Haki. But enough yapping, let's get back to the list. Colin, again, is somebody you probably don't think would be on this list, but this is the son of Scopper Gabon. Not only that, but Ripley is also possibly a valid fighter as well, seeing as she has a Giant's Warrior philosophy. Colin is being shown to be a character who will one day have a powerful resolve, and I could easily see him inheriting his father's Conquerors Haki in the future. He could possibly reach or even surpass the level of his father in his prime, which would place him above the likes of Rayleigh as well. He could essentially end up being a giant Scopper Gabon, and like we see with Harold and Xebec, a giant size doesn't nerf them when they actually know how to fight. Bonney's the definition of wasted potential. She could easily be top 1 if her fruit works the way that we think it does. Bonney's fruit is called the Age fruit, but it should low-key be called the Imagine fruit, because the fact that she can not only copy devil fruits, but also copy the awakened version of that devil fruit is actually insane. If that's an ability that gets weaker with age, then sure, that's a way to nerf it, but it doesn't seem like that's the case because it seems to be based on whatever the user can imagine. So if Bonney ever took a look into, let's say, Emu's memories and saw Joy Boy and said, give me a Joy Boyish future, could she then just replicate Joy Boy's strength and become that powerful? Bonney's hypothetical potential will place her at top 1 if she can copy Haki, but if not Haki and just ability and genes, then she has an argument for top tier regardless of that if she does end up being descended from a certain line of Celestial Dragons. Ending off the list is probably going to be the most silly one, and that's Franky. Franky's potential isn't physical, it's not Haki, but it's technology. Franky will be on the path to either rival or exceed Vegapunk's creativity and intelligence. Franky's mods to himself, just the mods alone took him from weaker than Bluno to essentially humiliating some of Kaido's top officers. If Franky starts getting Void Sentry tech, which we know is more advanced than what Vegapunk has, then he could get modifications beyond the Seraphim and on par with the destructive power of the ancient weapons. Logically, the only thing stopping Franky from modding himself with genetic enhancements rather than technology is simply just his morality. If someone like Queen could mod himself to get to be one of the top commanders of Kaido, then Franky could easily crack the top tiers of the One Piece world if he was truly allowed to do everything a man with his intellect could attain. I mean, I literally have 3 characters up here who are only up here because of Vegapunk's modifications and technology. One of those characters being in the top 10 of all time because of it. Again, Oda would never let Franky get that strong, but if EMF's tech could do more damage than a red rock from Luffy post Wano could, then Franky could definitely get crazy busted if Oda let him. This video was more hypothetical than anything, even though I said it wasn't going to be, which is completely out of the norm for most of my videos, but let me know what you think. Are there any characters I should have added to the list? And who do you think has the greatest potential of the characters that I listed? As promised, here's the hypothetical top 10 I have based off the potential video. It's gonna be going in this order: Luffy, Joy Boy, Blackbeard, Emu, S-Hawk, Ace, Zoro, Xebec, Koby, and Mihawk and Shanks being tied. For everyone trying to cook me for a swordsman being above Zoro, this is obviously if S-Hawk is allowed to grow up naturally. He would reach his prime with Zoro being the bar for him to surpass, so of course the man with the genes of the world's greatest swordsman and a literal sword devil fruit would surpass Zoro. It's not like Zoro is going to be able to mid-def Mihawk when he reaches his prime either, so S-Hawk having all of the enhancements on top of Mihawk's baseline would naturally place him as stronger than Zoro in the future. But regardless, if you enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more high quality One Piece content. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.